Roger was feeling more tired than usual after a long day at work. He had joined the company only 2 years ago. Back then, he had come straight from university, but now he was a junior manager at one of the biggest companies in Australia. It was an important job and came with a lot of extra work. Roger could understand why some of the other workers might feel jealous of him. They still called him the new boy, even though he had risen quickly in the company. Many of them, however, had been working there for years, doing the same jobs. He understood that their smiles might hide some bad feelings toward him, but it didn't make life any easier. Roger needed people whose advice he could trust when he had to make difficult decisions. He had to be sure that the bad feelings of the other workers didn't get in the way of the important business decisions he had to make. He knew he would never become a manager unless he could trust the people around him. Then there was Sarah. Roger was quite sure of his own good looks. He was dark, slim, and dressed smartly with a good sense of fashion. But when it came to Sarah, Roger's judgment vanished. Sarah was a bright young lady who had just joined the company straight from university. He was attracted at once by her intelligent eyes, her shy, pretty face, and her soft, round figure. Ah, Sarah. Take today, for example. He had been given some new figures to check and asked Sarah to read some of the details to him while he took notes. It wasn't until she had left that he realized that he had not written any notes at all. Instead, he had written Sarah's name several times. He was too embarrassed to ask Sarah for the details again, so he had to look them up in the office of old Mr. Ethan. Mr. Ethan was known for always being in a bad mood, and he was no different this time. He didn't like staying late to check figures for some junior manager. He didn't like it at all. Roger hated making mistakes. It didn't look good, but it didn't happen often. He decided to walk home instead of taking the train. It was late in the evening, but he felt he needed the walk to clear his thoughts after a busy day. Anyway, it would be a small punishment for being so stupid earlier. He decided that he would eat at the shopping mall near his home. He liked the Italian food there. As he walked towards his favorite Italian restaurant, he saw that the lights were still on in an old antique shop. He had often thought of looking into this shop because he liked shops that sold old things. He stopped and looked. There were boxes full of old books piled outside the shop. On the shop window was a notice that read, "Sorry, shop closed today, open again tomorrow." He bent down to look at the books. He saw all the usual old ones, school books, cookbooks, and others with dirty, yellowing pages that were of no value to him. However, there was one small, old book that he noticed at once. It looked much older than the rest of the books. He picked it up.
"Take it,"
said a voice behind him. Roger turned to see a man of about 80 years old. The man had opened the shop door and was carrying another box full of old books.
These have all been here for years. My nephew is taking over the business, and I don't want to leave him with all this rubbish. Nobody wants to buy any of it, so take what you want. Go on, help yourself.
Thanks,
said Roger as he put the old book into his jacket pocket and walked on to the Chinese restaurant. Roger sat at his table drinking a beer. He had been looking forward to his creamy chicken pasta. When it arrived, he found that the chicken wasn't cooked properly. It was pink inside. He decided to complain and called the waiter.
Sir?
Asked the waiter. Roger noticed that the waiter was new to the place.
I'm not eating this. The chicken is pink inside. It hasn't been cooked properly,
Roger told him.
It's rare chicken, sir. Many of our customers prefer its finer taste,
the waiter said. Roger looked straight at the waiter. He thought the waiter was not showing him enough respect.
Really?
Roger answered.
It's very popular, sir,
said the waiter.
And I suppose the illness they caught from eating undercooked chicken was popular with them too,
Roger said. Other people in the restaurant could hear. He was annoyed. The waiter said nothing, but his face turned red.
Please take this chicken back and give me a piece that has been cooked all the way through,
Roger told the waiter.
Certainly, sir,
said the waiter, as he took the food and went back to the kitchen. While Roger was waiting for his meal to return, he remembered the little book in his pocket. He thought he would take a look at it while he was waiting. He took it out of his pocket and examined it. It was small enough to fit easily into his pocket and was covered with old, fine leather. He had to clean off some of the dirt to read the title on the cover. At first, the title seemed to be in another language with strange letters and shapes, but as he looked, they began to change into English. He closed his eyes tightly and opened them again. He was mistaken, of course. He must have been. When he looked again, the title of the book was there. It was still dirty, but it was clearly written in English. It read, The Book of Thoughts. It didn't say who wrote the book. Roger thought it must be one of those old books that offered advice about life. He was disappointed. He tried to open the book, but it had an old metal lock that stopped him. Then, suddenly, the book seemed to open by itself to the middle pages. It was almost as if it wanted him to read it. What he saw when he looked surprised him. The pages had nothing written on them, and they were clean and white, not at all like the yellowed pages one would expect to find in a book this old. Did all the pages have no writing on them? Just then, the waiter returned with Roger's creamy chicken pasta and put it before him.
Thank you,
said Roger.
My pleasure, sir,
answered the waiter with a smile. Roger happened to look at the open book. It now had writing on the pages that had been clean and white just a moment before. The writing said, He wouldn't look so pleased with himself if he knew what I had put on his chicken while I was in the kitchen. That will teach him to make me look silly. Roger couldn't believe what he saw. Was this what the waiter was thinking?
Anything else, sir?
Asked the waiter politely.
No, thank you,
said Roger. As the waiter walked away, the writing disappeared. Roger looked down at his meal. He no longer felt hungry. And how could he complain to the manager about the waiter? Not without telling them about the book. Who would believe him? Roger left the creamy chicken pasta alone, paid his bill, and left. He did not leave the waiter a tip. When Roger got home, he felt exhausted. He took out the book and looked inside it once more. The pages were now all white and blank again. Perhaps it had all been a result of his tiredness. He had been thinking too much about work and about Sarah. That must be it. There was no other possible explanation. He was simply too tired to think straight. He went to bed and fell asleep almost at once. The train was less crowded than usual the next morning. He was lucky enough to find a seat for his short journey. He liked to watch people as they all sat or stood with faces that gave no sign of what they were thinking. Everybody avoided looking at another person in the eye. That might cause trouble. Roger relaxed in his seat. He had decided that the experience of the night before was best forgotten. Who has ever heard of a book that read thoughts? The whole idea was crazy. Then he remembered that he still had the book in his pocket. He ought to throw it away in the next rubbish bin. Yes, that's what he would do. Get rid of the stupid thing. He noticed that the woman sitting opposite was an attractive, smartly dressed, middle-aged lady. Her eyes looked down, and her face showed nothing of her thoughts. Roger wondered what she was thinking. Should he look at the book? Perhaps just a little look would be fun. Where was the harm in it? He reached for the book in his pocket and took it out.
Go on. You might as well try out the book, just for a laugh. Do it,
he said to himself. He opened the book, and almost at once, words in clear black letters appeared on the white pages. The words read, "I've given the best years of my life to him. Bank managers have married their secretaries before now. He must decide today. Leave that awful wife and marry me, or I'll shoot him and myself dead." Roger saw that the woman's soft handbag had something in it that looked hard. Could it be a gun? He quickly shut the book and looked away. Next, he saw a tough-looking man wearing a T-shirt showing his powerful arms. What was he thinking? Roger opened the book. It read, "I like chicken better than beef. Fried chicken is the best," followed by strawberry ice cream, my favorite. "Mom's a great cook. I love you, Mom." Roger couldn't help smiling at the man. The man saw him and gave him a dangerous look. Just then, the train reached Roger's station. Time to get off the train. He closed the book and put it back into his pocket. As he walked the short distance to his office, his mind shifted from the book to Sarah. He had been thinking of asking her out to dinner.
I'll do it today. But what if she hasn't thought about me in that way? Maybe she isn't as attracted to me as I am to her,
he thought. His heart felt heavy.
Hey, come on, Roger. She's not blind. She's sure to be interested. After all, You're a good-looking guy, and you are a junior manager.
Roger walked into his office. His secretary was already busy typing.
Any messages, Miss Walkers?
He asked her.
Yes, sir, from the manager. He says he can't go to the meeting today about the eatery business. He wants you to take over right away,
said Miss Walkers. Yes, this was the kind of opportunity he'd been waiting for. He would show them all just how good he was. This was an important piece of business. If he could make sure that everything went well, he would get noticed. He would be an obvious choice for the next manager's job. If he became a manager, he would be the youngest manager in the business. And Sarah would like that, wouldn't she? What woman wouldn't? He thought of her soft figure in his arms. Her voice was whispering his name softly.
Oh, Roger, Roger.
No problem. Tell the others I'll be there to prepare for the meeting in half an hour,
he told Miss Walkers. Just then, he noticed a little smile on the face of Mr. Ethan. Roger thought,
What's the old man got to smile about? He never smiles. Why is he smiling now?
Then he remembered his little book. He took it out of his pocket and hid it behind some papers. He pretended to be looking at his notes and thought of Mr. Ethan. The words appeared immediately. I'll teach that young fool a lesson. I've got some figures he doesn't know about hidden in my office. I've been working on this longer than he has. When he can't come up with the right figures, he'll look stupid. Then I'll produce them and save the day. He'll look like a boy trying to do a man's job. He needs to learn some respect for experienced professionals like me.
So the old man really does dislike me after all.
Roger wondered what all the others thought about him, but had no time to check his book.
Thanks, everybody. See you all this afternoon. Enjoy your lunch.
Roger told them all. While Mr. Ethan was eating his sandwiches in the park, as he always did, Roger spent his lunch hour looking for the missing figures in Mr. Ethan's office. Ethan was old-fashioned and preferred to use paper rather than recording things on a computer. It was a simple matter to copy the figures, then leave Ethan's copies where he had found them, in a box in a cupboard. Roger felt almost disappointed. This was too easy. Roger had missed his lunch, but it had been worth it. His little book was turning out to be most useful. The meeting that afternoon was a great success. Roger had all the figures he needed. The eatery company people were happy, and the papers were signed. Roger's future looked good. And as for Ethan, well, Roger could tell from his red face that he was angry because his little plan had gone wrong. Roger made himself a promise. He would make sure that Ethan's future would not be good, not if he could help it. Roger did not like to lose. After the meeting, there would be just enough time to call Sarah. Perhaps she would like to congratulate him over a drink. When Roger got to Sarah's desk, he found that she was away on a training session. She would be back the next day. Just my bad luck, thought Roger. Ah, well, for the time being, he could find somebody else to share this happy moment with. But how and who? Soccer. It was his favorite game. Why not arrange a game with William, his younger brother. William was a salesman. He had not gone to college, but like Roger, he had moved to the city. Roger always beat William at soccer. He liked playing with William. He would telephone him as soon as he got home and see if a game could be arranged for that very night.
Yeah, I see.
Roger was in his apartment, speaking on his mobile telephone. As he spoke, he held the phone more tightly than usual, listening to William. William was telling him that he had already promised to take his girlfriend to the cinema. As he spoke, Roger tried out the book to see if it would work over the telephone. It did. It read, "I hate it when Roger and I play soccer. He always wants to beat me, but he's always wanted to be a winner, at home, at school. It never stops, even when he has a career of his own. He never thinks of me, but then he never was much of a brother. He can do without his game this time. I'm staying home to watch television."
Okay, William, enjoy the film. Yes, goodbye,
said Roger. He had never realized that his brother felt like that towards him. It came as a shock. He spent the evening watching television and drinking wine with a takeaway meal. At least, he thought, he would see Sarah tomorrow. The next morning, Roger was sitting on his train to work. He was wondering whether he should look at the Book of Thoughts again when he saw a photograph of the attractive middle-aged woman he had seen the day before. It appeared on the front page of a newspaper held open by the person sitting opposite him. Her picture was next to that of an older man. The headline read, "Two die in lovers' shooting." He didn't have to read any more. It was obvious that the book had correctly read the woman's mind the day before and that she had carried out her plan. But it was too late to do anything now. Anyway, it was none of his business. Roger didn't feel like looking at the book for the rest of the journey. However, he did start to think more about the book. Why, he wondered, had he not told anyone else about it? The truth was that he could hardly believe in it himself. If he started telling others about an extraordinary book that could read thoughts, they would think he was crazy. And what harm it might do to his career. In any case, he did not know whether it would work for other people. Perhaps the book only worked for him.
Best leave the book alone for now. Yes, that would be best,
thought Roger. But the book still sat in his pocket as he walked off the train. The first part of the morning was brilliant. The manager was very happy indeed with the way Roger had arranged the meeting with the eatery company. It had been a great success. He received congratulations from all the people at the office. Many fine words were said to him about his bright future. Roger felt very pleased with himself. Then he thought of his book. What were they all really thinking about him? He wanted to know who he could trust and who he couldn't. He couldn't trust Ethan. He knew that. But surely there were not many like him.
After all, I am young, good-looking, cheerful, successful, and I'm one of the rising stars of the company. I must be one of the most popular guys here,
thought Roger. But he wasn't. In fact, the book told him so every time he looked at it. At first, he thought it was only the older people who were jealous of his success, but it was the young ones too, all of them. They thought he was clever, but believed himself better than they were, good-looking, but without any feelings. Some even thought he might be dishonest. They hated him. Roger had a lonely lunch at a cafe near the park. As he sat at his table, drinking strong coffee, he took out the book and looked at its cover. He read it, the Book of Thoughts. He opened it. There was nothing there, not a word. He wondered why it didn't show his own thoughts. Perhaps it was because he already knew them. Perhaps. But what if he asked it to show him his deepest thoughts, the ones he didn't realize he was thinking? Would it do that? Should he ask it? The idea frightened him. If thoughts were hidden, perhaps there was a good reason for it. Yet he still wanted to look. It was almost too much for him.
I won't do it. The last time I looked in the book, it told me things I wish I hadn't found out. No, I won't do it. Not yet.
He told himself. The cafe was becoming crowded, so Roger walked back to the office. Back to Sarah. She would be back from her training session by now. He would see her and ask her to dinner. He was certain that she would not be like the other people in the office. His darling Sarah. When Roger got back to the office, he saw Sarah. She was talking to old Ethan, but Sarah was nice to everybody. She was that kind of person. He called her over and she smiled at him. Even Ethan smiled. Sarah, at least, liked him. He could be sure of her. Darling Sarah. But he would have just one quick look in the book to make sure. He reached into his pocket. The book was not there. He felt alarmed. He quickly went back to his office. He searched all his pockets and his briefcase, even his desk drawers, though he knew he hadn't put the book in any of them. It was no use. The Book of Thoughts was gone. Roger remembered the crowds as he left the cafe. Had somebody taken the book out of his pocket? Things don't just disappear by themselves, do they? All kinds of thoughts came through his mind, but the least expected, and perhaps the most welcome thought, was the feeling that a heavy weight had been taken away from him. He went back to try and see Sarah again. She was talking to old Ethan again. She saw Roger and waved to him. At least, he thought, he still had Sarah. He had his career and he had Sarah. None of the other people mattered. He could trust Sarah. Of course he could. He was almost sure of it.